Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to our 6 of 6 district virtual community meetings. Tonight we are at North District with Commander Wally. I am Lieutenant Shane Foley with the IMPD Public Affairs Office. We've had a great time visiting and communicating with individuals from various districts across our city. These virtual community meetings give our citizens, our residents, our business owners an opportunity to engage directly with the commanders who are responsible for the police service in their area. So this is a great opportunity. Next week, we're going to have another one. It's not going to be a meeting. It's going to be more of an introduction to our Community Engagement Bureau and Commander Ida Williams. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to go to the IMPD Facebook page and check out the link to register for that. So tonight, if you have any questions for Commander Wally, go ahead and put those questions in the chat box now. Don't wait until the end to do that. You can also do that on the IMPD North District Facebook page. You can go there and send us some questions. But don't wait until the end to get your questions in. We'll get to as many as we can. Before we get to Commander Wally, I'd like to welcome Mayor Hogsett for some brief words welcoming everybody. Mayor?
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lieutenant Foley, and to all who are on the call this evening, good evening. Welcome to tonight's IMPD North District community meeting. I want to begin by offering my sincere thanks to Commander Michael Wally, to all of our North District officers, and to the entire staff of public safety personnel who are contributing to this evening's program. And I would be remiss if I did not offer my thanks also to the members of our North Side community who happen to be virtually tuning in tonight. Sorry, I'm not Zooming in tonight, but I'm glad to have the opportunity to join with you, even if it is simply over the phone. I'll start by stating the obvious. Indianapolis and our public safety and civic leaders are committed to a safer and a more peaceful city, even in spite of these enormously challenging times. And one way we can accomplish that goal is through collaboration and communication with members of every neighborhood throughout the city, particularly the neighborhoods where these officers serve. After tonight, as Lieutenant Foley mentioned, each IMP district will have hosted a community meeting just like this one. And that's because we believe a transparent, community-based approach best serves the cause of public safety. It is that perspective that's guided every major policy decision that we've made in recent years, from returning to neighborhood-focused, community-based beat policing, to implementing body-worn cameras for patrol officers, to our historic investment in grassroots anti-violence organizations. Community involvement is more than essential. It is transformational and critical. When a community stands up for itself alongside its law enforcement professionals, peace and safety are ensured. That is why community meetings like the one that we're about to enjoy this evening are so critical. So again, let me express my sincere thanks to all of you for joining with us this evening. And with that, I'm proud to hand it over to North District Commander Michael Wally. Commander.
Thank you, Mayor. Sharing, okay. When you look at the badge, what do you see? How do you feel? Words like integrity and protection come to mind? Or mistrust and intimidation? Regardless of how you answer this question, whether you are a law enforcement officer or a citizen, over the next hour, I would like to show you how we are policing with the community and not at the community, by using evidence-based practices led by intelligence, applied appropriately while holding true to our fundamental goal of building trust and legitimacy. I am Commander Michael Wally, and I have the pleasure of having direct oversight of the outstanding men and women of IMPD North District. Thank you for logging in. These virtual meetings are hard. I'm a walker, I'm a talker, so it's hard for me to sit still. This is a big adjustment for me. However, we need to get this information to you as soon as possible while ensuring we're safe from the weather, but also COVID as well. We've got a full agenda. Let's take a look at it tonight. So a couple weeks ago, the chief announced his 9 priorities for 2021. They included accountability, things like our general orders board, use of force board, review of our discipline matrix, improving data collection and dissemination, complaint data, use of force data, crime data, using surveys to better understand the type of police department our community wants and expects, leveraging technology, whether that's situational awareness tools to deploy resources with laser-like focus into the community, whether it's relay or B-link to improve how we get feedback from the community, refining our training like de-escalation training, bias-based policing, or scenario-based training, continuing to evolve our use of force standards, launching an inclusive, proactive violent crime reduction strategy, which we'll talk about, the Enhanced Community Safety Initiative, focusing on hiring, recruiting, retaining a high-quality, diverse workforce, or enhancing community engagement with the Office of Public Health and Safety and our Community Engagement Unit. A continued focus on behavioral health and wellness for the officers and our citizens alike with MCAT and behavioral health. If you look at these 9 priorities, they may sound familiar to you. If you recall, in 2014, then President Obama announced the Task Force on 21st Century Policing. There were 6 pillars. They were building trust and legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology and social media, community policing and crime reduction, training and education, officer safety and wellness. IMPD is light years ahead of other agencies as we have already put into practice several of these recommendations. So tonight, we'll go through the 2020 city data. We'll look at crime data specific to North District. We'll introduce the district as there's been some changes as of last July. We'll talk about the challenges we face impacting crime. We'll talk about the North District philosophy. We'll introduce the Enhanced Community Safety Initiative. We'll do a recap, and we'll have some time for questions. "2020 was a tough year for the world. But even here in our country, the United States has experienced the largest single one-year increase in homicides since we started keeping records. Statistics compiled from 223 police agencies by the Major City Chiefs Association in Perth show that homicides across America rose more than 28% in the first 9 months of 2020. Aggravated assaults increased by 9%. Some point to officers being directed away from proactive policing due to the pandemic or civil unrest, while others point to job losses or other stress, fueling tensions and leading to violence. Time magazine reported gun violence has risen drastically with over 19,000 people killed in shootings or firearm-related incidents in 2020, versus a report I found that showed in 2018 there were 14,000. This is the highest death toll in over 20 years. Now let's talk about how we were impacted in Indianapolis. As you know, in 2019, we had 153 murders. There was a 39% increase into 2020 with 214 murders. Non-fatal shootings were up 41%. The number of victims involved in these shootings rose 36%, which means there were more instances of multiple people shot during single incidents than the previous year. However, overall violent crime was down 3.56%, but you wouldn't know that based on looking at the news. Overall property crime continues to trend down at 11.29%, driving our overall crime down 8.64% for the city. Now let's talk about North District specifically. In North District, if we just look at murders, we had a decent year, and I say that knowing that one murder is too many. But if we look at the 10-year average on North District with the new boundaries, we average roughly 36.6 murders a year. North District had 47 murders. That's a 51% increase. The last time we saw numbers like this, it was 2016, where we saw 46. Non-fatal shootings, in 2019, we were at 81, and in 2020, we rose to 100. But even still, our non-fatal shooting average for a 9-year span of time was roughly 102. So we were a little bit below our average. And despite that, robberies were still down 23%, burglaries were down 24%, larcenies down 22%. However, we did have an uptick in vehicle thefts, and we have to attribute this to people leaving their cars running while they're warming up, or leaving their cars running while they're going into businesses and leaving the cars unattended. Those are all things that we can, as a community, adjust and fix. However, overall crime was down by 10.5% on the district. So then we move into 2021, and where are we at? I think you all recall on January 24th, 2021, we lost Raymond Childs, Kezzie Childs, Elijah Childs, Rita Childs, Kiera Hawkins, and her baby on Adams Street. 6 individuals lost in one incident. It was a senseless loss of life. If there's any news, it's that there was an arrest made pretty quickly after this, bringing some justice to the rest of the family. And then our latest homicide occurred actually the same night. It was a non-fatal shooting, or deemed a non-fatal shooting then, on January 24th, and the victim just passed away here a couple days ago, raising our total to 12. If there's any good news, it's that of the 12 murders that have occurred on North District this year, we have made arrests in 10. Hats off to the investigators working hard to bring justice to the impacted families. As far as non-fatal shootings for us this year, 18 non-fatal shootings. The violence in our community highlights the fierce urgency of right now, and why North District is committed to, with pinpoint accuracy, relentlessly going after those individuals who are committing violent acts in our neighborhoods. I think it's only appropriate, since last July there were some changes in our boundaries, to kind of identify what those are now. Our northern boundary is, of course, 96th Street. That's pretty much from Ditch all the way over to Olive Geist. Our southern boundary jogs from Massachusetts to 14th Street on the outskirts of downtown. Our eastern boundary is pretty much Emerson, up Fall Creek, and then in and around to encompass Geist. And then our western boundary is at 96th Street Ditch, jogging down to Grandview out to Michigan Road. It's roughly 75 square miles. One of the larger districts. It's also one of the most populated districts. You see that total of 210 to 240,000 residents. That's simply because the number of retailers, malls, corporations, and businesses that are on the district, that data kind of expands a little bit during the day for those people that are working or shopping recreationally. So 75 square miles, just to give you some perspective, it's a little bit smaller than Cincinnati. The district is divided into 20 patrol beats with a minimum staffing of 26 and 1 ET. There's roughly 47 to 55 officers assigned per shift. Detective section is made up of 14 detectives. Our neighborhood impact unit is made up of 20 officers split between CRU, our flex team, our narcotics team, which will soon be the violence crime task force. We have 20 supervisors, of which my executive staff encompasses Captain Paul Soselski. Lieutenant Scott is our NIU commander. Lieutenant Crotty is over our investigative section. Lieutenant Morgan is our day shift commander. Lieutenant Ryder, our middle shift commander, and Lieutenant McEwen is our late shift commander. Very good group of supervisors. A lot of different backgrounds coming together to form a pretty good team. I'm excited to move forward into 2021 with this team. We've got a lot of work to do, obviously, with the crime numbers being what they are, but I know we've got the right people to get it done. So let's talk about North District as a whole, a very diverse district, both with race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic status. All you got to do is start at 16th Street and Meridian Drive north to 96th Street, and you can see how things changes. So what does that mean? We need a diverse workforce to respond to the needs of our community. On North District, we are intentional about developing a talented and diverse workforce. I'm a pictures guy. There's going to be a lot of pictures in these slides, and it's really just an attempt so you to see the officers that work for you. I want you to be able to see what they look like. It's a great group of officers. They do a tremendous job supplying police services to our community. Extremely proud of this team. We've endured a lot, but we're getting better day by day. As far as our workforce, very diverse. We know that diverse groups of employees pull from a wider range of sources and experiences, which equals better decision-making and problem-solving. Diverse work groups also enhance employee engagement and retention, and a diverse workforce is more likely to understand the customers or citizens' needs and come up with ideas to fulfill them. This slide, or at least the pie, represents the 2018, 2019, and 2020, and the first, 2020 recruit classes or draftees from the recruit classes that North District received. Nearly 40% of the officers drafted were minorities, which is pretty significant considering Marion County census data, and then even more impressive given the department's overall demographics. So let's talk about some of the challenges that we face as we look towards dialing into violence. Things like hunger, poverty, lack of opportunity, hopelessness, mental health issues, drug addictions, lack of education. These are all things that contribute to violence. I get asked all the time, why is violence occurring? Erosion of social norms, lack of conflict resolution skills, reduction in the value of life. These are just a few of the factors that contribute to violence in our neighborhoods. Now, let's be clear, there are people out there who are violent due to their selfish desires. We may never be able to reach them with social service partners or resources. That's when we have to use enforcement. However, there are some that are just trying to survive and in need of help or mental health services. So yes, we are dialed in and focus on violence, but we want to also make sure we hit the brakes and ensure we offer opportunities to those who want and need resources. In a few slides, you'll see how we specifically attempt to partner and address these issues while also impacting violence head on. It's going to be our community-oriented policing. So let's talk about the keys to success. Imagine it's 1961. You're in the Green Bay Packers locker room. for the first day of training camp. You're coming off of a tough loss in the championship game the previous year where you squandered a fourth quarter lead. There's 19 Pro Bowlers in the locker room with you, one including Bart Starr, the profound quarterback. You're waiting for your coach to walk in and address you for the first day of practice. And your coach walks in and he says, "This is a football." That coach is Vince Lombardi, and he's basically asserting the importance of the fundamentals. And so in North District, we keep it simple. We define ourselves by 3 pillars: impacting violence, enhancing community relationships, and personnel development. These 3 pillars are constantly considered in every decision that we make. For example, if we're having an issue in one of our neighborhoods, and I go to one of the lieutenants and I say, "Hey, we need to come up with a plan to address this specific issue." Those lieutenants know that I'm going to ask them, how are we impacting violence? How are we measuring our success? How are we enhancing community relationships? Do we have a meeting? Are we getting feedback? Are we leveraging their resources? And how are we developing our personnel in the process of doing this crime strategy? These pillars also serve as our goals for the district. We're wanting to reduce crime. We're looking for new and innovative ways of enhancing community relationships. And we're always looking to supply our officers with the best training, additional training, and details around the department to make sure that they get more knowledge, skills, and abilities on board. So let's talk about the plan for 2021. The Enhanced Community Safety Initiative, dubbed ECSI. It's an umbrella strategy that encompasses various interrelated initiatives with the goal of reducing violence. ECSI is driven by intelligence, crime analysis, potential violence indicators, and community input and engagement. ECSI is comprised of hotspot policing, directed patrols. So the beat officers will focus on disrupting violence through increased visibility in known violent areas. They will be doing enforcement actions with the thought of every stop is an opportunity to build rapport and gain actionable intelligence. We'll be focused on problem solving, community-oriented policing, so addressing some of those challenges that we saw on the outside of that violence circle. District level investigative task forces, be it our Flex team, the new Violence Crime Task Force, and all this will be supported by a robust citywide investigative strategy, realigning resources and driven by technology and data analysis. In short, it targets high-risk individuals and places with a laser-like focus. This is not a zero-tolerance neighborhood saturation. It's not stop and frisk. This is focused on engagement while being in historically violent locations identified through data collection and analysis. So let's talk about hotspot policing. Hotspot policing, there's no real true definition of what hotspot policing is. It varies from city to city, from agency to agency, as does the application of hotspot policing. In fact, there have been 49 different research studies compiled all over the country. Research easily uncovers significant crime reductions in 84% of the 49 studies. However, agencies who use heavy enforcement tactics solely lose legitimacy and increase mistrust in underserved communities, which is why we are not using heavy enforcement tactics and instead focus on deterrence through increased visibility and community engagement. We will have an enforcement piece, though. Our enforcement component will be intelligence-based to specifically target the individuals and places contributing to violence. We're not throwing a huge net out there and hoping to catch someone. To guide our actions on North District, we're going to use the following hotspot policing pillars. Geographic analysis of micro places and trends. So this is going to be data-driven. Emphasis on long-standing crime locations problems. We're going to use problem-oriented policing and hotspots. We're going to ask, why are those areas always glowing red? Emphasis on analysis and development of tailored solutions. So if you look at this map that's on your screen, those bright red locations indicate where our current hotspots. Actually, this is a historic map, so this is historic data. Interestingly enough, the hotspots typically stay the same year over year. And so our problem-oriented policing will be focused on asking the question, why? We're going to be pumping the brakes and asking why. And we're going to come up with tailored solutions for each individual area. I bring up a good example. Over the last several months, Butler-Tarkington has had a couple of violent incidents occur, non-fatal shootings, I believe a couple homicides. But we believe that they were domestic violence related. And so during a meeting in one of the Butler-Tarkington Association meetings, this was brought up. The community liaison officer assigned to Butler-Tarkington got with those individual leaders, and they've decided to do a domestic violence campaign in that area. We've partnered with a grassroots organization called Silent No More, who has a tremendous amount of services and resources available. And we've created small cards for our officers to carry, but more importantly, there are things to pass out in the community so that people are aware of the services that are out there for domestic violence. I bring up another example, Shadeland Station. If you recall the subway murder that occurred during a robbery, after that incident, we had a large community group, and one of the biggest concerns was police visibility in that specific area. We held a couple of roll calls out there on all the shifts. We even had the horse patrol come out and do patrols for a little while. But the community got together with Bragg and other community groups and developed a substation in Shadeland Station, bringing more visibility to that area. Officers go in and out of the building. There's snacks. If you feed them, they will come. It's an opportunity for them to go to the bathroom in a clean environment and feel safe while they're unwinding and doing reports on their laptops. Their Shadeland Station and Bragg and other community groups are now looking at utilizing B-Link, which we'll talk about a little bit later, to further assist them in reducing crime in their community. Engage the community is one of the other pillars. We're going to use feedback from surveys, community meetings, officer interactions, and positive contacts. We'll discuss one of the surveys we deployed in December 30th of last year. And just so you know, there's going to be a hotspot policing meeting led by Officer Murphy and I for the areas that you can see identified in red and in orange. We're going to have a meeting to talk about plans specifically tailored for those areas. That's going to be on March 2nd. March 2nd at 1800 hours. Officer Murphy will be sending out information about that. And then the last pillar will be the directed patrols, or reorienting patrols. So we're going to put officers in the targeted intersections, the right blocks or places or streets or micro locations. And this is going to be based on the Copra curve, which is 15 to 16 minute dosage trying to drive down crime. The Copra curve is based on a study done in Minneapolis, hotspot policing experiment. It was replicated in Sacramento. There's a lot of success behind it. Based on the experiment, Copra found that police maximized their deterrent effect by increasing patrols in the crime hotspots for 10 or 16 minute intervals, conducted randomly for every 2 hours. According to Copra, the likelihood of crime or disorder within 30 minutes after a drive-by patrol was 15%. For stops of 10 to 16 minutes, the likelihood was driven down and reduced to 4%, causing deterrence to peak. So what is dosage? Dosage is how we measure the amount of directed patrols. And remember, these are going to be enforcement actions, bike patrols, parking lot stationary patrols, walking patrols. It's going to be opportunities for the officers to get out, develop actionable intelligence, get good contacts, build rapport, horse patrols, invest, business checks, all sorts of things. The idea is to be seen by the community and the criminal element. So good question is, how do we determine where to deploy our resources? Historic data is an easy one. But in the mornings, the commanders get together with Deputy Chief Barker, and we talk about the previous 24 hours and the violence or property crimes are interrelated to the other districts and how we plan on addressing those issues through our patrol plans. Here you see pictured with the Golden Girls background is Officer Reinierson. She is our strategic intelligence officer. And the gentleman on top is Marcos Garcia. He is a CGIC analyst that is in-house. They're both instrumental in guiding our directed patrols and proactive responses. But we also take the time to develop referrals for the Office of Public Health and Safety. Shauna Majors, Director of Violence Reduction, has her team working hard out in the community, and we will generate referrals and send those. Now, typically we use these if there's any sort of retaliation or beef between a couple of people as a way of kind of intervening, getting in front of it before it leads to violence. Her team provides wraparound services, life coaching, things of that nature. Now, we use data, but the most important measure for our success or metric for our success will be community feedback. You know more so about your community than anyone. You're there a whole lot more than our officers are. And so this is where we need to continue to send emails. When they see something, say something. Let us know what's going on. Let us know how you're feeling in your community, which is why it's so important to connect with your community liaisons and officers, but also the block captains or neighborhood associations, so you can communicate what your concerns are, so that information can be communicated to us and we can come up with solutions to alleviate some of those issues. So how does this data become actionable? Our patrol plan. So the patrol plan is based on the previous 24 hours. Every officer on the district gets a patrol plan and there's information relevant to their beats. This is pretty much how the directed patrols are directed. Now, the officer has the discretion to choose what activities he does while in these hot spots or in their beats or in their communities. It can be community engagement, walking patrols, bike patrols, or traffic enforcement. The goal is just to disrupt violence. When they are doing enforcement actions, like I said before, they are serving with a model of each interaction is an opportunity to build rapport and gain actionable intelligence. Within this patrol plan, you've got wanted persons, emerging trends, incidents broken down by zones, hotspot locations based on weekly trends. They also have a section for community events just in case the beat officers want to stop by and help out with the community event. Now, the accountability component. So officers are responsible for generating CADs and provide those locations, the times that they were marked out, and what they did to their supervisors. That is all compiled on a daily report that's sent to all district supervisors, including me, and we make adjustments based on the need or dosage. So, briefly talk about MCAT and the Behavioral Health Unit. This is one of the ways that we're helping to reduce violence, but making sure we're taking care of those in need, mental health assistance. The Mobile Crisis Assistance Team, or MCAT, is a partnership with with Eskenazi Hospital. They respond to real-time dispatches. They assist responding patrol officers. They identify current needs and contact or connect patients with resources. They take control of the run, if feasible, and get the beat officers back in service. And they are a valuable asset to addressing the challenges with mental health issues. MCAT responded to several runs last year for us. It's important to note that when they respond, there was not an arrest made in 95% of their interactions. And you've got the behavioral health, which is the follow-up component. They are the ones that really follow up after the incidents occur and connect resources with or connect the patients with resources. Both sections have a licensed master's level clinician assigned with them. It's a pair, and they're responsible for basically internal education for departments and citizens alike, but really just driving down those 911 calls related to crisis or mental health crisis. They do have a tremendous workload, and they do an outstanding job for us. Just a brief breakdown of the MCAT runs. 54% of them are in that other category, and that's simply because right now public safety communications has a limited way of titling calls. And so your other categories are going to be like your mental emotionals, your family requested an MCAT officer, things like that, or just someone having a bad day and wanting to speak to an officer, and we've got a clinician and MCAT officer paired up to go and talk to them. 90% of these were substance abuse incidents, and then 13% of the time we were dispatched because of suicidal persons. That's a picture of Drain, Kucha, and Robbie, who are both MCAT workers. So neighborhood impact under the leadership of Lieutenant Scott has been repurposed. We've got our flex team, narcotics team, which will now be the Violent Crime Task Force and Community Relations. These guys are out of the run queue. They work on long-term investigations, problem-oriented policing, proactively addressing violence. They work closely with the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, which basically they utilize the collection of gun evidence, linking shootings together, and try to build real strong cases on trigger pullers throughout the community. They will also work closely with IVRP, the Indianapolis Violence Reduction Partnership, which is a bi-weekly meeting of various law enforcement agencies. They really hone in and focus on the most violent offenders, but then also review shooting cases to see if there's any attention that needs to be placed on them. And sometimes they also generate referrals to the Office of Public Health and Safety under Shauna Major's team. Here's a picture of our flex team. Again, this is an outstanding group of officers dedicated to disrupting violence. This is the enforcement section of NIU. They're actively out in the hot spots, doing research and intel gathering. They're deployed based off of intel. They're responsible for getting the guns, the crime guns, wanted persons, narcotics out of our community, along with the assistance of the beat officers. Interestingly enough, one of our flex team officers did a long-term detail and had some training on procedural justice, which lives by the principles of treating people with dignity and respect, allowing people to have a voice before and after police encounters, being neutral and transparent with their decision-making, and being viewed as trustworthy and legitimate. There's a plan in place to possibly get more officers trained in the procedural justice model, which I think will be an outstanding addition to a lot of the innovative training that we're doing on this agency. Here's a couple examples of their great work along with narcotics. So this is a result of an intelligence-led traffic stop near 71st and Benford based off of a narcotics community complaint. It led to 2 individuals being arrested for illegally possessed guns and/or drugs. Here's another one. This was another one based off a community complaint in the Butler-Tarkington area, resulted in an arrest of 2 individuals for invasion of privacy and carrying a handgun without a license. More illegally possessed guns were taken out of our community. And this is the last one, another great example of how intel-led policing works. Officers sat off of a known drug house, made a vehicle stop, which resulted in more drugs taken out of our neighborhood. So our flex team is really focused on gathering data, then deploying into the neighborhoods and getting those individuals who are out there causing harm in our neighborhoods. So then a new addition is called the Violence Crime Task Force. So this is going to be a team made with 1 crime gun detective focused on long-term investigations, 6 narcotics investigators, a strategic intelligence officer who's going to keep us focused on the most violent, a community relations officer who's going to gather feedback through meetings, surveys, and constant communication, and 1 supervisor, VCTF. They're going to work 1600 to midnight or during the most violent crime hours. They're going to work closely with homicide, aggravated assault, CJIC, IVRP. They're going to conduct proactive criminal investigations of the most prolific violent offenders in the district hotspots. They're going to respond to confirm reports of shots fired with no known victim and investigate the cases based on solvability factors. And they're going to conduct thorough debriefings of suspects arrested in hotspots. So let's talk about our CRU, or what I like to call our Y team. Why? Because they have the ability to slow things down and ask why. CRU is used in hotspots for visible patrols, walking patrols, and enforcement activity too. However, the role is so much more. They're the tip of my problem-oriented policing initiative. Problem-oriented policing represents police-led efforts to change the underlying conditions at hotspots that lead to reoccurring crime problems. So basically, they are addressing those outside factors contributing to crime as much as possible. They're basically going out, exploring the situations or hotspots. They're going to formulate what the problems are. That's done through survey, and I'll show you one here in a second. Collect data. We got to do a little bit better job of that, but they're going to analyze this and come up with solutions. Some of those solutions could include, situational crime prevention measures, nuisance abatement, code enforcement, securing abandoned buildings, cleaning up neighborhood cleanups, help out with surveillance. They do a multitude of things. Many people don't know that we also have a bike park here at North District. We utilize that to teach a life skill while breaking down barriers with the people that come out to our bike park. We usually, before COVID, we hosted several different community events out there where youth were able to ride bikes on the track, but also there's like obstacle courses and things of that nature. We also, just to let you know, last year in 2020, we rode 2,500 miles, which is a significant number. So here's one of those surveys that I was talking about. It's also a picture of my detective team, which is a great team. They are a hardworking group of individuals that carry a tremendous caseload. But this is one of those surveys that we're talking about. This was actually sent out to all the neighborhood groups in December, just kind of asking what your concerns are so we can come up with a way of addressing those through a plan and working together with you. Just some flyers from some of the community events that we've done. Boss Up Career Fair was one where we were looking at increasing employment in the 46218 area. This particular job fair had image consulting, resume building, entrepreneurship workshop, and dress to impress fair. The next one is a food drive. We have several different food drives that we do. We partner with several different organizations like Gleaners in Midwest. An example of a community cleanup with Legacy Park, where officers help clean up the Forest Manor ballpark in conjunction with 5 other churches led by Pastor Edwards, trying to create a clean, nice, safe environment for the youth in the area. And the last one is just a organized crime symposium that we put together based off of some retailers wanting to get together with law enforcement and express concerns and come up with plans with addressing issues in the retail crime organization or area. Then this is how you guys can help out. North District has been piloting Relay for a little while, which is basically a community engagement app. You can get it from the Apple Store or Google Play. It really streamlines the user's interface and allows residents to report directly to officers. It's used for non-emergency reporting only, though. You also get a crime map that will show different incidents, and then our officers use it to broadcast information out to the general public as well. Another option is B-Link, which we talked about briefly. There's 2 options for B-Link, B-Link Indie and B-Link Pro. B-Link Indie is just basically getting on the website and registering your cameras. That way investigators know who they can contact if they need video for an incident that may have occurred near your home. There's no cost to this, just requires you having working cameras. And then there's B-Link Pro, which is based off of Project Greenlight in Detroit. It's a partnership with Indy Public Safety Foundation, IMPD, your business, and the local installers. Basically, You purchase the cameras, you set them up. The goal is to just get those cameras linked to our incident analysis center. Please know it's not a monitoring system, but what can happen is if a 911 call is dispatched within a mile of that camera system, we can feed into that and give the officers real-time updates. But you can go to the B-Link website. I think it's blink.org to get more information on those, but those are ways of utilizing technology to kind of bring the community into solving some of these issues that we're seeing. So now we'll go to the recap. We have discussed the city and district data pointing to the need for change. We have introduced North District and expressed the uniqueness and challenges we face. We have shown how data will lead us to the problem individuals, places contributing to violence. We have talked about the Enhanced Community Safety Initiative focused on hotspots and problem-oriented policing. We have also discussed on how you can use technology to help our efforts and be a part of the solution. The only thing left to discuss is why we are having this meeting. You know, I grew up in Indianapolis and never had any interaction with law enforcement until the summer of my junior year at U of I. I remember speeding on I-65. I was late to a weight training practice, and I knew the punishment for running late was you had to run the entire practice, which I'm not built for speed and I hate running. An officer pulled behind me, rightfully so, turned on his lights, pulled me over, and stepped out of his vehicle. My heart began to race. It wasn't an IPD officer, and it wasn't a Marion County Sheriff's officer. The agency doesn't really matter. But I didn't know what to expect. As he got closer, I remember watching him in the mirror. As he approached, I dialed into the fact that he pulled his gun from his holster and put it behind his leg almost to conceal it. He never pointed it at me, but I was terrified and I was scared. The incident ended and I received a ticket. I was so upset. I was confused. I was fearful. It bothered me for a while. Did he know I was just a college student? I know what you're thinking. He was mad because he received a ticket. No, I was mad because a gun was pulled out of its holster without an explanation why. It wasn't pointed at me, but it was enough. It took me going to the police academy to understand a few things. My windows were too dark. They were really dark. He couldn't see in my window. Traffic stops are really dangerous for officers. He didn't know what was waiting on the other side of that window. He likely had kids at home and his kids needed him to come home after his shift. Action is faster than reaction, and the officers are always behind the curve. But all the years of frustration could have been alleviated with communication or information. I tell this story not to highlight the incident or to ask you to decide if it was right or wrong, but to discuss the importance of communication and information. Communication and information allowed my perspective to change. His actions became legitimate in my eyes after receiving the knowledge from the academy, which is why you're here tonight. We will be deploying a crime suppression strategy in your neighborhoods. You will see an increased presence by design. I don't want you walking away confused, fearful, or concerned, or left to wonder why the police are sitting in a parking lot across from your home with its lights on. I don't want you thinking we're out here to get any and everyone. We just want to make your community safe. I don't want you to feel the way that I did after that encounter my junior year. So please continue to learn and engage your police department. It's the only way we're going to get better. And it's the only way we're going to make North District a safer place to live and work and play. And now we have time for questions.
Thank you, sir. We're trying to get to as many as we have. It's nice to see as much engagement as we do here on North District. First question we have is what is being done about crimes around Community North Hospital? Every night it seems there's shootings, robberies, assaults, etc. I know the apartments just south of there are a real problem. Thank you.
So Community North Hospital in and of itself has its own police department, just started, but they're only really responsible for the campus. In that particular area, we discussed the Shaylin Station substation that was put together by the community group that was up there. And I think it's kind of helped drive down some of the potential violence. Um, I know the apartment complex were mentioned. We also plan on having a complex managers meeting in April. I can't remember the exact date. I know it's like the first or second weekend in April, and that information is forthcoming. Just to really talk about best practices, we're going to try and partner with the prosecutor's office. I know they have a phenomenal program where they go in and talk to apartment complexes, or did. We're going to try and bring that back just to talk about ways of reducing crime and helping out. Some of the other things we can talk about are B-Link, things like that. I think that's going to be a successful addition to any community group, just adding surveillance and getting that sign that says that they're a B-Link participant.
Next question is, I've been trying to access stats basically on the IMPD or the city's website, but have not been able to. When will that be up and running again, if we even know the answer to that question?
I don't have the answer to that question.
Neither do I.
I can I can certainly have someone follow up, though.
And this has kind of been a concern that a lot of people have, is not seeing the police, and I think some of this comes from just because the police are in the neighborhood doesn't mean the citizens will necessarily see them, because they have to be at the right place at the right time to see officers drive by. But the specific concern says, I live in Geist Harbors. This is a community of 2,000 homes in Lawrence Township. I serve on our board of directors. Residents have asked if IMPD only responds to calls for assistance, and do they do any proactive patrolling?
So the answer is yes, we do proactive patrolling. We've got to remember North District is a pretty big landmass, roughly the size of Cincinnati. We take roughly 103 to 110,000 police runs a year. So the officers do their best to maintain a presence in their communities, but it's hard, and you're not going to always see them. But they are out there. They're doing a tremendous job trying to be visible. What I would say is, as though if there is a complaint or a lack of visibility, I have my lieutenants responsible for the shifts, the shift commanders on this call. I'm sure they've taken note of that particular neighborhood, and I'm sure we'll start deploying some resources to make sure that we can get some visibility in there. I'd also like to see if there's any sort of community engagement that we can do up there as well.
Next question, I think it's a question. So my daughter was murdered in a road rage incident. Her killer admitted to shooting her and was never arrested or prosecuted. I've seen several criminals do little or no time for being arrested for third or fourth offenses. I appreciate all the hard work of police officers. How will things change if there's no consequences for their criminal offenses? So the question is, how will things change if there's no consequences?
I'll tell you what, we as an agency, we just burrow down and do what we can do and control what we can control. We're going to be out there in your neighborhoods each and every day doing the best job that we can, really targeting those people that are out there perpetrating violence. When we make the arrest, that's what we can do. We have hardworking investigators that put the best cases they can together. Anything beyond that is outside of our control. But the biggest thing is just know that we're out there doing our best to try and be as visible and impact crime as much as possible.
Next couple things are some comments. Ashley Gervitz, good to see. Message from Ashley. Says, thank you, IMPD North District, for your continued collaboration in the community. While it may not, it moved. While it may not go, you said often, your daily sacrifices to protect and serve others is a major blessing to many. As neighbors, we're here to serve along with you. So we appreciate that, Ashley. Diana says, just a reminder to all residents that social media is only a tool in the fight against criminal activity. To report a crime or incident, you must call 911 or the non-emergency number at 327-3811. I'm sure you see it a lot, as we've seen it on other districts, that people will complain or report crimes on things like nextdoor.com or Ring, and then wonder why the police aren't responding to those concerns. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I often receive emails from people, and they're frustrated because there's usually long chats about incidents occurring in their neighborhoods on Nextdoor. We don't have the capability to monitor next door and social media like that. When we're monitoring social media, it's specific, very specific, looking for specific things in people. So we don't have a catch-all way of monitoring everything. So I would always encourage people to call us, send us emails, contact your neighborhood liaison. There should have been an email sent out to all the neighborhood groups. If you did not receive that email, please send an email to me and I will make sure you get connected with the neighborhood liaison to be able to push information to you and so that you have the proper way of reporting crimes or incidents that occur in your neighborhood.
Richard asks, flex teams, are they in uniform, in street clothes, or both?
Flex teams are in uniform.
Will VCT be within each district?
Yes, that's going to be a citywide initiative.
How many North District officers, I'm not sure we know this offhand, but how many North District officers are members of ERG? And can you speak to how they've been affected by the events in Indianapolis in 2020?
So I don't have the number of ERG officers assigned to North District. We do have several, and I know that simply because when there are details that go out, we get a list of the officers that are going to be detailed to those events. As previously discussed, 2020 was a rough year, specifically for ERG during the civil unrest that occurred and everything that was going on downtown. It impacted them tremendously. And some of them are still impacted by that, which is why we have made sure that we get them hooked up with EAP and wellness to make sure that we're checking on their mental health and well-being to ensure that they're still effective in doing their jobs. But to say the least, 2020 was a rough year. You couple that with COVID and not really being able to see your family or do things or really let down and travel, it just made it really rough to deal with a lot of stuff. And, you know, police officers, we see so much and it's difficult, but hats off to these officers for being resilient and showing up every day and doing their job.
Caden says, my name is Caden Jones. I'm currently a candidate in the 23rd process. Just wanted to say this was very helpful and informative. Thank you. We are continuing to recruit, so if you're interested, go to the IMPD, joinimpd.nd.gov or Facebook page, join IMPD. What sort of coordination, if any, is there with small departments such as universities?
Well, we've got a good relationship with Butler. We are establishing a relationship with Community North. There's also some smaller agencies or towns within North District, and we have a pretty good working relationship with them. It's really just event specific. You talk about things like the civil unrest or not civil unrest, but some of the things that occurred on the district around that time period. We coordinated with the Butler to make sure that they are aware. Sometimes we help out with how they do things. But I would say that it's really just a good relationship and being able to make a phone call. And if anything is needed, we're always happy to help, and they're always happy to help us as well.
James said he lives on the border of North and Northwest District, and an emergency is the closest car dispatched or just the closest car from the designated district?
Well, it depends on the run type. If it is something like a person shot or a panic alarm or something like that, that's going to be an all broadcast. So all districts will usually hear that information. If it's other things, then it's going to be the in-service officer closest to that beat if the beat officer is not available.
You know, something else I'll add is that I've seen our communication center does a good job of, let's say it's a burglary in progress and it's maybe by their policy it doesn't get dispatched to the whole city, but if they recognize that it's close, or a supervisor or an officer on that district recognizes it's close, that information will be shared with officers on the other district. And you know, our badges, our patches say Indianapolis, officers will respond anywhere in the city or anywhere in the county that we're needed to go. So even if they're not initially dispatched, that information is often shared with officers from neighboring districts, and those get shared. So a couple things for where we're going to go from here. There are some more questions. Commander, if you could address a couple things. One is how can people have questions that were asked here that they didn't get answered? How can they reach you? Any closing remarks? And then we're going to kick it over to Chief Bailey for some closing comments.
So here is the district contract sheet. Hopefully that's large enough for everyone to be able to read it. If there's a question, need, or concern, I would have you reach out to Sergeant Vince Stewart and his group, which would be our community relations officers. So vince.stewart@indy.gov would be a perfect contact to get some of those questions, and then we can go through them as a team and make sure that we get you the feedback and answers to your questions.
And any closing remarks before we kick it over to the Chief Bailey?
No, I just appreciate everyone logging on. It really means a lot, to have an engaged community that wants to know about what's going on in the district it's like heaven, because what that means is you're taking accountability in your own space, in your own neighborhoods, and you're wanting to make a difference. So I really appreciate everyone logging on. I would prefer to be in front of you talking, walking, hugging in some cases, some of the familiar faces that we see a lot of our community events, but we've got to make sure that we do the responsible things and make sure that we have these virtual meetings. So I will say this, just remember there is going to be a hotspot policing meeting in March 2nd at 1800 hours. There'll be more information pushed through our email accounts and social media accounts as well about that.
And anybody who wasn't able, I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
I just said thank you for your time.
Anybody who wasn't able to watch the entire presentation, maybe you missed something, maybe you want to go back and look at it again. Maybe you have a neighbor or friend who wants to see it. This will be posted on YouTube later tonight, so you can go to a IMPD TV YouTube page and take a look at it and view that presentation there. Again, we thank everybody for joining. I'd like to welcome Chief Bailey for some closing remarks. Chief?
Thanks, Lieutenant, and thanks, Commander Wally, for a great presentation. Commander Wally has a great team on North District. North District holds a very special place in my heart as I served as the commander up there, and Wally has done a great job in his tenure as chief, and I have no doubt that 2021 is going to be better than 2020 was for not just North District, but all of us together. There's a couple questions that I saw in there, and I'll give you a quick responses to. You can go to cityprotect.com, cityprotect.com, and sign up. That website is connected directly to our records management system, reporting system, and CAD. And you can get information there about what's going on in and around your neighborhood, cityprotect.com. One of the questions that Mr. Jackson asked was about cars closest to the area. We're exploring technology and that would allow dispatch in partnership with the sheriff's office to dispatch officers who are closest based on GPS information. That's something that's ongoing, and we're working on it. Commander Wally's presentation was really well done. It went a lot into the Enhanced Community Safety Initiative, which you'll be hearing more about over the next several weeks. It's an initiative that's going to be on all of our 6 service districts, and it's part of our massive reorganization that we're doing in order to make sure that we're staffing our priority, which is to reduce violent crime. That is our #1 priority in 2021, and we're going to make sure that we do it in conjunction with our community, who have to partner with us in order for us to make the inroads that we know are necessary to impact crime, not just now, but long term. And we can do that together. So I appreciate those that sat on here for this hour, a little over an hour tonight, and listen to us. Make sure you reach out to my partners here at North District if you have questions. It's a great team. They're very community oriented, and I'm very proud of the work that they do each and every day. So thank you. Try to stay warm, stay safe, and we'll see you in a couple weeks at some of the other virtual meetings. Have a good night.